Hey there and welcome. My name is Judith Cobb and we are going to be doing a little presentation today on iridology again, and that presentation is going to be on myths and fables. I don't think there's very many natural health sciences that are so riddled with so much old stuff that's not great information. So we want to dive into that today. So we are just getting ready to roll here, and yeah, and we're gonna go up to there. All right, so welcome. If you're just joining me, I'm so glad you are with me today. We are going to be talking about iridology, which is of course one of my favorite topics, and we are going to very specifically be looking at some very common myths and fables that are still circulating in the iridology world. These are myths and fables that just don't want to go away. And it would be okay if there was some semblance of truth in them, but really most of them there's not. And so we want to very much be knocking those out of the park. Hi, Beth. Glad to see you there. Thanks for joining us on Instagram Live today. So today we are going to be talking about iridology myths and fables. And so we're just going to pop the camera around so you can actually see my screen. There we go. And we will periodically, of course, bring the camera back because that's just the nice way to do things. Awesome. So the very first myth that we want to bust is the owl story. You know, years ago, this story was told that in the 1800s, Ignaz von Petzschle, as a young boy, actually caught an owl. The owl had a broken leg, or the owl tried to latch onto his arm. I mean, there's so many versions of the story that we really don't know what happened. But the story goes that this boy, Ignaz, was only 11 years old, and he noticed a mark that showed up in the owl's eye, a black line that showed up, and then as the leg healed, it disappeared. Well, we now know a whole bunch of things, and that story comes into question. There's some doubt around it. Bill Cardona, who is one of the founders of IPA, which is the International Iridology Practitioners Association, and also one of the key players in bringing constitutional iridology to North America, says this: modern iridology can't explain the owl story. Von Petzschle's story from a very long time ago has not been reproduced. So, you know, when we talk to veterinarians and people like that, they don't see this in animal eyes, owl eyes, or any other kind of animal. They don't see a black line forming with a break and then disappearing as the break heals. So, as Bill says, it's just a waste of time to repeat the story. It creates confusion. Critical thinking is required when applied to any topic, and I totally echo that 100%. Bill continues, if you look at a picture of an owl's eye or most any animal, the structure of the iris is different from a human's. There is no anterior stroma, just a smooth posterior leaf without individual strands of fiber. So it is structurally impossible to have such an event. So that's just a really important thing to remember, is that, you know, we talk about lab studies and where we're doing studies on rats or on other animals. And we often say, well, that can't possibly be totally extrapolated to humans because their systems are not the same. So when drug studies are done on animals, how it affects the animal is not going to be the same as how it affects a human, because our physiologies are different, our chemistries are different. The same is true when we speak of iridology. The eye's structure is fundamentally different, and therefore we cannot extrapolate, even if this did happen in an owl's eye, that it would happen in a human eye. And actually, in a week or two, I have a case study where I show you before, during, and after pictures of multiple bone breaks and what we see in the eye and what we don't see in the eye. So you can stay with me for that. What we do know is that the irides don't change fast enough to monitor any changes within a few weeks or a few months. So this is a really important thing, because so many people use iridology to sell supplements, right? They use it to sell supplements, and they do these before and after pictures, and they say, well, if you use these supplements, this is going to happen to your eyes. And what I want to share with you is that's just not how it goes. When you look at the images that are on your screen now, you see it's actually the very same eye. But what do you see there? Do you see two eyes that are very different colors? So many people that are talking before and afterward go, oh, look at the cleansing. The image on the right is so much bluer. Wow, he's done some great work on his health. That's amazing. But what we know is the sclera, we know a couple of things. First thing is the sclera doesn't give up pigment. It accumulates pigment over time. This is inherent. The iris rather doesn't give up pigment, it accumulates it. And this is an inherent trait because the color of your eye and the structure of your eye is inherent. It's what you were blessed with. It has genetic coding that goes back 3 or 4 generations. It's not going to change because you stopped eating sugar. What can change, however, is the sclera itself. We can see, for example, this blood vessel at the age of 42 that was very prominent has become much less prominent in this newer image. This blood vessel has become more prominent as this gentleman got older. So where we will see changes is in the sclera, because the sclera is dynamic. It is not inherently dictated. So the first thing, again, is that irides don't change fast enough for us to monitor those changes within a matter of a few weeks. But the sclera might, depending on how acute or how chronic the problem was. The second point is that the irides accumulate pigment. They don't disperse it. So these are actually my husband's eyes from many years ago and from this year. And you can see that as we look at this, this is actually the scan of a print because I didn't have a digital camera 23 years ago. I don't know if digital cameras were actually around and if they were even any good 23 years ago. But the tech difference alone is enough to explain the differences in the color. This is a film print. This done with an incandescent flash. This is a digital print done with an LED flash. LED tends to be sometimes quite blue. And that's why the image on the right looks much bluer than the image on the left. I promise his skin tone has not gone from this orangey color to this pinky color. Nothing like that at all. So the tech is what is so significant here for the color change, but we see that the pigment has accumulated. And again, notice the blood vessels and the change in the blood vessels that we can see up here and how prominent they are and the changes there. That's where we're going to see the difference. Some other things that just don't happen are healing lines, and neither do black lines that confirm a broken bone. So these actually are my photos. My photos, these are my eyes from 2017, this one. And then what happened is March of 2019, I broke both the distal ends of the radius and ulna of my left arm. So looking at the left iris, if there was going to be any kind of a black line showing up in the iris for a break in the arm, it should be here, because the breaks were serious enough that I underwent a 3-hour surgery to install plates and screws in the arm. And so this was actually taken 5 days after the surgery. I had enough presence of mind with all those medications circulating through my body, because yes, I do surgery with a general anesthetic. I'm holistic, but you draw the line somewhere. And then again, same camera, but something different lighting in the room, different settings, whatever. So the color looks a bit different, but taken a few months later. Let's come down here first, May 2019. Oh yeah, this is what happened. First breaks were the 12th of March. And just as they were healed up and the cast came off, I fell down some stairs and I broke the olecranon off my left elbow. And so again, you know, we don't see any change. Here we are. This is about 8 days after the second surgery, because they had to open up my elbow and put in screws and wires and things to hold the olecranon in place so that it would actually reattach. And as then we look at August 5th, 2019, so a few months later, we again don't see any difference in the fiber structure. And so there are no black lines. There are no healing lines. Well, you can see, I don't know if you can actually see on, if you're with me on the webinar, the scars. And if you're with me on Instagram, I'm going to flip the camera around. Don't know if you can see the scar going down there, and see there's a scar down here right between the tendons, and then there's a scar on my elbow. So that's all the proof that I really did mess myself up. And but we don't see those healing lines in here. That is so important. So the owl story, probably not true for the owl, but absolutely not true for humans either. Another myth that is out there is that we can actually get rid of pigment, that pigments equal toxins, and you can cleanse the pigments out of your eye. That is so not true. This is a quote from Harry Wolff, who is one of the other brains behind bringing constitutional iridology into the North American world. He says, in fact, it's bogus and a dogma only found among some holdouts from the Lindlar, Kreitzer, and Jensen schools of thought. The notion that certain metals, minerals, toxins routinely show up as diagnostic indicators in the iris has long been refuted and proven unreliable. There is no evidence to support the notion that heavy metal toxicity is measurable in the iris, likewise drugs, candida, etc. The dark spots, or the pigments in an eye, are genetically predetermined, as is the overall color scheme. So these, again, are my husband's eyes, because he's my most willing guinea pig to let me talk about his health, right? All of these pigments, been there all along. The pupil is smaller, and that makes the iris tissue look wider. It makes the fibers look straighter. It also, by comparison, means that these pigments take up what appears to be less space, but they have not dissipated at all. In fact, again, he has acquired pigment over time. So pigments are not equal to toxins, and actually the proper word would not be toxin, it would be toxicant, and we do not cleanse them out. Those pigments are there. They tell us a little bit more about the person's predisposition. These colors in my husband's eyes suggest a bit of a weakness or a bit of an inherent predisposition to some insufficiencies with his pancreas and blood sugars. And that, although he has no indications of diabetes, that is the thing that he struggles with. He would eat bread 12 times a day every day of his life if I would let him, but I won't let him because I'm a good wife. We've also heard issues or stories of people saying, I can see parasites. These are parasite lines. You've got a parasite in your brain. Oh my goodness, you better do something to get rid of that parasite. Again, from Harry Wolff, he said this: American sources from the turn of the 20th century are very unreliable, repetitive and very misleading, with silly and debunked notions like drug spots, psoriatic itch spots, healing lines, parasite lines, and brown eyes turn blue with detox. And so these are not an indication of parasites. As a matter of fact, as constitutional iridology has come to the forefront, and with what we know from constitutional iridology, these indicate, because they are breaking the collarette, that there may be a risk of interruptions in the nervous system and the nerve feeds. And when we add that to these lines that come around, it underscores that likelihood that there are interruptions in the nerve feed, and this person probably lives in a more sympathetic zone, in that they're always waiting for the next bomb to drop, the next shoe to fall, the next crisis to happen. They're never actually completely and totally relaxed. So here's the deal. We cannot diagnose from the eye. I know there's all kinds of sites all over the place that talk about iris or iridology diagnostics and diagnosis, but the fact of the matter is only licensed medical practitioners are legally allowed to diagnose. Iridologists, even if we are NDs or MDs, don't diagnose from the iris. This is so important. I studied Jensen iridology many years ago, like back in the 1980s, the early 1980s, and I did a lot of diagnosing from the eyes back then, telling people what was wrong with them. And the interesting thing is, I was usually wrong. Yeah. Fast forward, after learning constitutional iridology in the early 1990s, I found I was right more often because I wasn't talking about you have this wrong with you. I was asking about, is there a personal or family history of issues in this area? And with what the eyes would tell me, that's how I would base my question. That's what I would base my question on, and it would give me a lot better information to do that analysis with, and it would help me create deeper rapport with my clients because I wasn't just looking at their eyes. They would come in, they give me their shopping list of things they would like help with. Then I look at their eyes and I take photographs of their eyes. It's just easier to work that way. And I correlate what I'm seeing in the eyes to what their concerns are, because that helps me to understand why their concerns are there. Helps me to understand the physiology and their inherent chemistry so that I can actually do a much better job of creating a program for them. Bill Cardona says this: iridology should not be used to diagnose. It is a unique assessment tool to gain understanding of the blueprint of the body, including tendencies towards illness patterns or the assessment of resiliency and resistance against negative influences. But diagnosing the presence or state of illness or disease from iridology is never appropriate. So if this is making you curious, if this is sort of debunking what you already believed about iridology, or if it's making you think, there's more to this than what you had thought, I'm going to ask you, are you curious about it and do you want to learn more? If you do, there is an upcoming course, Constitutional Iridology Certification Preparation course. It is taught via live webinar. It is 22-hour-long classes. It starts November 7th, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And if you want to just go ahead and get registered for the course, jump to the bottom link that's on your screen, iridology.education/priority. If, on the other hand, you maybe want more information, then I hope you'll join me for a webinar on Thursday. Yes, Thursday. I'm just looking at the dates on the calendar. Yeah, Thursday, October 31st at 11 a.m. And the registration link for that is bit.ly/iridology course. And I've got all of the information for the course, all of the what's included, how much is the tuition, how are you supported in the course, what can you get out of the course is all in that link, or in that webinar. So I hope you'll join me then. Do remember that space is limited in the course. Whenever I teach a course, I really limit it, no more than 10, and I prefer 5 or 6 students in the class because I really believe in giving a lot of personal attention to my students. And so I hope you'll consider joining me for that, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care and have a great day. Bye for now.